Israeli military launched what it said were 100 airstrikes at multiple locations across Lebanon. These strikes, I must stress, they came without warning. They came at a moment of confusion across Lebanon as to whether the regional ceasefire applied here. We had, statements from the Pakistani Prime Minister. Pakistan had been key to the negotiations between the US and Iran, saying that it did apply, and then at 6 a.m. local time we had the Israeli Prime Minister saying that no, the ceasefire did not apply here in Lebanon, and the Israeli military has made that abundantly clear this afternoon. This is one of the most devastating days of the war in Lebanon. We are having mass casualties.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this special report. Tonight, we bring you the latest developments from one of the most volatile and closely watched conflicts in the Middle East, the escalating situation between Israel and southern Lebanon, a crisis that continues to intensify and reshape the security landscape of the entire region. I'm reporting to you as tensions remain extremely high along the Israel-Lebanon border, where military exchanges, airstrikes, and cross-border fire have become a near-daily reality. What was once a contained border confrontation has now evolved into a sustained and dangerous cycle of retaliation, involving the Israeli military and Hezbollah, the powerful armed group based in Lebanon. To understand the current situation, we must begin with the core of the conflict. On one side is Israel, which says its military operations are focused on eliminating threats posed by Hezbollah in northern Lebanon, particularly rocket fire and drone attacks targeting Israeli border towns. On the other side is Hezbollah, which states that its actions are a response to ongoing Israeli military operations and what it calls aggression against Lebanese territory and allied interests. Caught in the middle is the civilian population, both in northern Israel and especially in southern Lebanon, where entire communities have been displaced, infrastructure has been damaged, and daily life has been severely disrupted. As of now, the border region remains highly unstable. Israeli air operations continue to target what officials describe as Hezbollah infrastructure, including weapons storage sites, command positions, and launch areas. These strikes are often carried out with precision air power, but they have also contributed to widespread destruction in several southern Lebanese towns and villages. In response, Hezbollah continues to launch rockets and unmanned aerial systems into northern Israel. While many of these are intercepted by Israel's defense systems, some still penetrate defenses, forcing evacuations and keeping residents in a constant state of alert. The result is a situation that resembles a grinding, low-intensity war. One that is not formally declared, but is deeply real in its consequences. Now let us turn to the situation inside Lebanon itself. Lebanon is facing one of the most difficult periods in its recent history. The conflict along its southern border has placed enormous pressure on an already fragile nation dealing with economic instability and political division. In southern Lebanon, entire villages near the border have been heavily affected. Many residents have fled northward, seeking safety in already overcrowded cities. Schools have been closed in multiple regions. Healthcare systems are under strain, and humanitarian organizations report growing shortages of basic supplies in affected areas. The Lebanese government finds itself in a deeply complex position. On one hand, it is officially responsible for state sovereignty and has repeatedly called for an end to hostilities and respect for international borders. On the other hand, Hezbollah operates as both a political party and an armed organization within Lebanon and holds significant influence in the country's political and military landscape. This dual reality makes decision-making extremely difficult. Calls for de-escalation exist within the Lebanese state apparatus, but Hezbollah's military decisions are not fully controlled by the central government, creating a fragmented response to the crisis. Meanwhile, in Israel, the government has maintained that its military campaign in the north is necessary to ensure the safety of its citizens. Israeli officials argue that continued Hezbollah activity near the border represents an unacceptable security threat, especially after repeated rocket and drone attacks on civilian areas in northern Israel. As a result, Israel has expanded its military operations, focusing heavily on border zones and strategic locations in southern Lebanon. These operations are intended, according to Israeli statements, to push Hezbollah forces further away from the border and reduce their operational capabilities in the region. However, this strategy has also contributed to rising tensions internationally, as concerns grow over civilian casualties and the long-term consequences of sustained military escalation. At the center of this conflict is Hezbollah, formerly known as an armed political movement operating within Lebanon. Hezbollah maintains that its actions are part of a broader regional resistance framework and claims it is acting in defense of Lebanese sovereignty. Israel and several Western countries classify Hezbollah as a terrorist organization and hold it responsible for cross-border attacks and regional destabilization. The exchange of fire between Israeli forces and Hezbollah has created a dangerous pattern of escalation. Each strike leads to retaliation, and each retaliation increases the likelihood of further escalation. Military analysts warn that this cycle, if not contained, risks expanding beyond border skirmishes into a wider regional conflict. International reactions have been increasingly urgent. Diplomatic efforts are underway behind the scenes, with global powers calling for restraint and renewed negotiations. There have been discussions about potential ceasefire frameworks, but so far, no durable agreement has been reached that can fully halt the fighting. One of the key challenges in achieving peace is the lack of direct consensus between the main parties. Israel demands security guarantees and the removal or containment of Hezbollah military infrastructure near its border. Hezbollah, meanwhile, insists that Israeli military presence and operations in the region must end before any long-term calm can be achieved. This fundamental disagreement has made diplomatic progress extremely difficult. On the ground, the humanitarian situation continues to worsen. In both northern Israel and southern Lebanon, thousands of families have been displaced from their homes. Emergency shelters are operating at capacity, and aid organizations warn that prolonged displacement could lead to a deeper humanitarian crisis if the conflict continues. In southern Lebanon specifically, the destruction of infrastructure, roads, buildings, and utilities has made it increasingly difficult for civilians to return, even temporarily. In some areas, entire neighborhoods have been damaged or abandoned due to repeated strikes and ongoing insecurity. At the same time, in northern Israel, communities near the border are operating under emergency conditions. Many residents have been relocated further south, while those who remain live under constant threat of rocket fire, with schools and businesses frequently disrupted. What makes this situation particularly dangerous is its unpredictability. While both sides have, at times, indicated interest in avoiding full-scale war, the intensity of ongoing exchanges leaves very little room for error. A single major incident, such as a large-scale strike or a significant casualty event, could rapidly escalate the conflict beyond its current boundaries. Military observers describe the situation as a high-risk equilibrium, where both sides are actively engaged, but neither is fully willing or able to step back without achieving their strategic objectives. Diplomatic channels remain open, but fragile. International mediators continue to push for de-escalation, humanitarian access, and a potential framework for long-term stability along the border. However, trust between the parties remains extremely low, and previous ceasefire efforts have struggled to hold. As we look ahead, the key question remains whether this conflict will remain contained or expand into a broader regional confrontation. The involvement of external actors, regional alliances, and ongoing political pressures all add layers of complexity to an already volatile situation. For now, the people living in the shadow of this conflict continue to bear the greatest burden. Families displaced from their homes, civilians living under threat, and communities struggling to maintain basic normalcy, all are reminders that behind every military report and political statement, there is a human cost that continues to grow. This has been a special news report on the ongoing Israel-Lebanon border conflict. We will continue to monitor developments closely and bring you updates as the situation evolves. Thank you for watching, and good night.